Now, Ronald.
Hi, good morning, Bafikile.
How are you, Ron?
I'm very well. How about yourself?
Thank you. I'm very well.
Well, it's wonderful to hear your voice.
Oh, thank you. I'm also thrilled to see you. Hey, this world has become something.
Are you able to join by video, or do you prefer to be off screen?
I have.
And welcome everyone to this panel this morning at Fordham University, discussing how the COVID-19 crisis has impacted the lives of asylum seekers, refugees, and other migrants in the city of Johannesburg. And we have several speakers that have joined us. We have a couple that we're hoping are still going to manage to sign in. They may be experiencing technical difficulties. And so our first speaker is Ethel Munyai, who's the director of the Migrant Support Center. She is not with us yet. We hope that is still going to be able to happen. But I'll just go over how the logistics of this will work. Each speaker should plan to speak for about 5 to 7 minutes. And we have to keep that fairly tight because we don't have a great deal of time. We'll go through all of the speakers first, and then once all of the speakers have spoken, then we will go on to a question and answer period. Just so people who are aware of who the audience is is made up of people from both the CUNY community and the Fordham University community. Most of them are students from my Introduction to Sociology class, but I also have 3 mentees who are seniors who are doing dedicated projects right now on doing research on Johannesburg, even if they cannot be in Johannesburg right now. So I'm going to let each speaker introduce themselves after I call their names so that they can tell us who they are in their own words. I think that's probably a better way than having me do it. And so since, oh, Ethel is here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Perfect timing. Thank you, Ethel, for joining us. And so you are the first speaker, and can I just have you introduce yourself briefly, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role, and then you have the floor for about 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ethel Munyai. I'm the program manager for this Outreach Foundation, and my focus is social service and migrant units.
Okay.
So yes.
Oh,
basically, what we do at Outreach Foundation is that we work with migrants who are coming from all over the countries, like Ghana, Congo, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and other countries as well. So what basically is happening currently is that COVID came, I think it was a worldwide global pandemic that actually challenged many people, but it was actually worse for migrants who are undocumented and documented. So looking at our current status for South Africa, it was really challenging for the migrants because they couldn't access any basic needs because the South African government actually insisted that people who are undocumented cannot be assisted. Rather, they need to be deported back to their countries. But yet, the challenge was that the borders were closed. So as NPOs funded by international donors, we had to come in and actually assist the migrant communities with food vouchers that were supported by, for Outreach Foundation, it was supported by Mukuru, ELM, Bread for the World, and other individual funders. So currently, as we continue, we are looking into ways of how can we assist migrants to be able to sustain their lives while living in South Africa. And the key thing is we're looking into assisting them actually build their own small income generating businesses, which can then generate income for them and their families while they are still in South Africa. And we are also assisting them with applying for documentation so that they can live in South Africa and be able to work in South Africa. Ronaldo.
And okay, so are you finished there now, Ethel?
Yes, I thought it would be easier if I just ask people ask questions and I just reply.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to go now to the next speakers, and then the question and answer period will come after all the speakers have gone. Thank you very much, Ethel. And we'll now go to David Monda, who will introduce himself and describe a little bit of his role and then give us his talk. Thank you, Ethel.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Ron. Can you hear me, Ron? Everybody?
Yes, we can. We surely can.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Ron, for the opportunity to speak to you a little bit about my my research. I did an initial project work of about 3 months in Johannesburg, South Africa. And this was in 2019, in the summer of 2019. And I'm mainly studying the experience of African migrant entrepreneurs in Johannesburg and how they experience xenophobia. So the experience of xenophobia for African migrant entrepreneurs. And basically we're focusing on those Africans that come from outside of the border, migrants who are born outside of South Africa, mainly in the neighboring countries, but some of them from as far as Nigeria and the DRC. And the idea is to try and investigate this black on black violence, the xenophobic hate, and what some of the roots and causes of the xenophobic violence towards these migrants is. The puzzle in this question is the fact that for so many years, South Africans fled to other African countries to seek refuge during the apartheid era. But in the post-apartheid era, we see violence particularly targeting Black African migrants and particularly those in the townships. So the puzzle here is to try and understand what are the motivations behind these attacks, and specifically thinking of the non-material incentivization of this xenophobic violence. So aside from the economic issues, the economic deprivation, how are identities constructed, and how do Black South Africans who are attacking other Black migrants, what are some of their misconceptions, their myths, and their construction of identity of others? So it's an ongoing research. Hopefully when COVID winds down, I'll be able to get on the ground and to actually begin surveys and observations. And essentially in conclusion, I'm really thinking about the historical and ideational construction of otherness. So basically, how has the history of apartheid developed and become a basis for some of this xenophobic violence we see? And how do different African immigrants who come to South Africa to start businesses, how do they experience this violence? So thinking about the difference, for instance, of a migrant from Nigeria versus one from Somalia or one from the DRC, I'm really interested in unpacking the individual experiences around xenophobia. And then finally, my hope is with this research to help policymakers like Ethel, Bafikile, who I spoke with in Johannesburg, when I was there, and government officials to encourage a deeper understanding of migrant experiences, because a lot of their stories are untold and a lot of their experiences are underserved. So I'm really excited, and I'd be glad to take your questions on this topic. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, David. And I know that you haven't been able to go back there since the COVID crisis started, but hopefully during the Q&A, we can talk a little bit about how COVID has impacted the very same groups that you have been studying. So next up is Mwaona, who is joining us from Malawi now.
All right, thank you so much for the opportunity. I greatly appreciate. I did my research in Johannesburg, and most of the migrants that I talked to were very much eager to have their voices heard. So this is very huge for me. I think it's one of the platforms where their views could be heard. My research focused on the reintegration of Malawian migrants, especially from Mangochi, and how that relates to the money which they send back home. So my observation that I made in this study was that the Malawian migrants, should I go into full details, or maybe that would be another time?
No, I think you can go into detail now.
All right, okay. So my experience was that Malawian migrants are usually recognized as economic migrants, possibly because we have never had a war in Malawi, but most of them, they migrate to South Africa because of a complex mix of reasons. And some of them, they leave because of hunger, and when they try to ask for maybe to be recognized as refugees, they are usually declined because they say, oh, there's no hunger in Malawi. So because of that, most of them, they migrate to South Africa illegally. And this affects their integration, and their integration is also even affected further because of the remittances that they try to send back home. So I observed that Malawian migrants, they do a number of works. Some of them, they work in, most of them, they do the jobs which most South Africans are not willing to take. For example, there were some Malawians who were working as I'll use the word garden boys, which is really colonial, but this is how people sometimes speak about it. So these are the jobs which most South Africans are not willing to take because they have an apartheid history, and there was a lot of white occupation in South Africa as compared to Malawi. So Malawians are okay to do those jobs. Maybe they would work in some household, then they'll send back money home, which actually South Africans sometimes they struggle to do. So actually, this money helps people in Malawi a lot, especially Mangochi, because that's where my research focused on. They're able to send money home to build houses. They're able to pay fees. So this is very interesting because Mangochi is not known for education. Most people in Mangochi, actually, they prefer to go fishing and so on. But most people in Johannesburg, they realize that the students should have an option. They have to choose what they want to do with their lives. So even though most people do not prioritize education, they still pay their fees so that they can make their own decisions. At some point, I was also paying for a child in Mangochi, but later on, he told me that she preferred to do other things than to go to school. So those are some of the challenges that are there. So now that we have COVID-19, there are so many challenges that are taking place in Johannesburg in regards to Malawian migrants. And some of these include unemployment. And because of that, some are having very serious problems to the extent that some they have to stay with their friends so that they can earn a living, or maybe, they can have at least some kind of shelter. And there are also some cases where some women are even forced to go and live with their boyfriends. And these are some of the boyfriends who maybe they never planned to be very close that much. But because of the challenges that are there, they are forced into such very challenging environment. And so that has also even affected the money which they sent back home here. Because as you know, in 2018, 83% of remittances that came to Malawi were from South Africa. So this has greatly affected Malawi. And you may be interested to know that currently we're having shortage of Forex. The country is running out of Forex. Sometime back, I wanted to do a transaction and I actually had to struggle because it's very difficult to find Forex. And all these things are happening partly because we don't have a lot of money coming into Malawi now. So the other challenge, the other change that has also taken place in terms of remittances is that in the past, Malawians could send money through, let's say maybe Paisa, Mukuru, and sometimes if they want even to send more, to save more money, they could send it through bus drivers and so on. But because of the COVID-19, they're unable to do that. They can only send maybe through Paisa and Mukuru, but they cannot save more by sending through drivers. So all those things are coming into play, making things very challenging for Malawian migrants in Johannesburg. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mwaona. And our next speaker is Simon, and Simon is also here with Richa, and they will introduce themselves.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Simon Kikouta. I work for an organization, NGO organization called MES, based in Johannesburg. It stands for Mold, Empower, Serve. We have 4 branches spread out in Johannesburg, Kempton Park, Port Elizabeth, and Cape Town. We help the underprivileged, the homeless, and we cater for skills development. We also run a couple of ECD centers, that's your early child development centers. In other words, creche or creches, we run those. I am seated next to Richa, and Richa will also introduce herself. I'll just speak a little bit about MES and our role during the COVID-19 response and what has happened so far. So during the hard lockdown, we had homeless people spread out in the city of Johannesburg. And the authorities, the police, decided to pick up most of these guys and drop them off across the many drop-off centers or shelters. The number that we could accommodate during the lockdown period and due to the COVID-19 regulations did not allow us to accommodate extra people. We had a lot of challenges because this was a new thing for an organization like MES, but we were equally ready to respond. Prior to the lockdown, most of our shelters, up to now, most of them are accessed by migrants and citizens. They pay a minimum fee to stay for the night. At some of the shelters, yes, we might offer a plate of food, and at some we do not. In particular, in Johannesburg, in Jeppestown towards Maboneng, we have now partnered with the DSD, that's the Department of Social Development in South Africa, to have that shelter specifically registered and accommodate citizens. We are also in talks with the different officials to see how we can accommodate migrants within the surrounding areas where we operate. I think I'll hand over to Richa to also introduce herself and say some few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so privileged to be here today and share what we've been caring on ourselves. For me, it's a great opportunity to be given this to be given this place for me to communicate with people out there. My name is Richa Kamina. As I said, I'm one of the founders of the African Migrant Women Voice, which is an association for migrant women residing in South Africa from different countries, different nationalities. We found it appropriate to form this organization that will work toward assisting migrant women and their children. It's mostly not all the African country, but it's mostly the countries that have a problem or crisis, like Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, uh, Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, Ghana. Our organization focuses on women empowerment and migrant community upliftment. Our main goal is to improve the lives of migrant families. Our mission is ultimate to create jobs, increase income, grow small businesses for migrant women, entrepreneurs, to promote migrant women of all ages to improve their circumstances. Why African migrant women being created? Everyone in the world came to the atrocity of the migrants, that migrants are the subject to in South Africa due to the self-hate and xenophobic behavior, which many migrant families have been badly affected socially, emotionally, physically, and economically. African Migrant Women Voice as the first amendment to a peaceful assembly and believes that migration can be a positive drive for development and migrant women can become the key agents in this process. And also another thing that I would like to add to the COVID crisis, besides what everyone knows, and then the COVID crisis made their lives more difficult. We've been experiencing difficulties and big challenges. Besides what we normally have, now it's become worse. There's so much frustration that's been born during this crisis. Many people lost jobs. As I said, most migrant people, we have small jobs. Either they live on a daily basis of selling on the streets, and others are working the bars like men. They normally like bouncer. I don't know they call them very well. They like working on the bars, restaurants. And during this crisis, no one could go to work. And thus creating a lot of frustration in the house. And we also experienced a lot of abuse. Then many people have been fighting because of not having what to do or what to eat. So yeah, lives become very, very difficult. And we have like complaints like every day. Though we ask sometimes for assistance from government or some organization, big organization like MES, where we can get some help here and there. We got some food parcel, but what was not enough. So at the present moment, what we really need, we try and see what can we do to come out of the situation, because this is our lifestyle. We've been here in South Africa for so long, and it's like we're losing hope, and then we don't know what to do, and things becoming very difficult. The employment rate in South Africa is rising on a daily basis. So what we suggest, as I say, African Migrant Women Voice is this migrant women that came and speak out of one voice, because we realize that we all have same challenges, same problems. So we came together and try and find a solution together. And we will appreciate if there will be people who can come in and tell us what to do, because we have so many plans that you've done, like the pro-COVID plan, which we are working on for like to try and create jobs and try and empower ourselves. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richa, and thank you, Simon. And our final speaker is Bafikile, who will introduce herself now.
Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Bafikile Mkhize. I'm the director of eKhaya neighborhood. eKhaya means home. eKhaya neighborhood started in 2004, and during this introduction, I'll be wearing two hats. The one is for eKhaya and the one will be for Cathedral Christ the King as a volunteer of the soup kitchen. So I'll try explain first the eKhaya neighborhood. It's about the property owners who are doing business in social housing, which means all the people living in Hillbrow. I've been listening to Mwaona. In Hillbrow, that is where all the people have made it their home, away from home. So the social housing people saw that opportunity of all the people who were coming to live in South Africa, but without having accommodation. So they started to do business in housing. So all the people that are in Johannesburg, most of them that you're talking about now, they live in the social housings because their rent is affordable and the place has been made to be safe for anyone to live there, for anyone to study, for anyone to bring his family. It's unlike before when Hillbrow, during the early 90s and years before, it was only for people who were coming to do work. There were no families living in Hillbrow. And due to the history of saying Hillbrow is a no-go area, all those things just became changed through the social housing that created a safe environment for every migrant coming to live in South Africa, either for work or for studies. So I'm managing Hillbrow, which have got more than 72 buildings in our area. And most of the people, when you want to study about Africa, you can come to Hillbrow because that is where you are going to meet everybody from sub-Saharan countries. They're all represented there. So in eKhaya, during the COVID, we've been hit so hard. And with our tenants living in the buildings, some of them being migrants, and some of them, most of them are working in the restaurants which were closed, there were no work, but they were allowed to stay even without paying rent. But there comes food. We thank the mass, people like Mass, Simon, Outreach Foundation, Ethel. You really held the neighborhood during COVID up to today, because most of our people were depending on the food parcels from Mass and Outreach. So these were the aunties and uncles of the Hillbrow neighborhood during COVID. You managed to keep up our people strong, up to date, and the businesses are doing so. They're starting to come up very well because you have held the customers in during the difficult times of COVID. Then within eKhaya neighborhood, we've got the security company that we pointed to look after our streets and safeguard everyone coming to Johannesburg. David, you would agree with me. You have seen the bad boys, but they're doing the good work. So whoever will be coming to Hillbrow, you will meet those bad boys, but they are your uncles. They are in Hillbrow. They safeguard everyone. Right. On the eKhaya note, I think I'll stop there, and then any other question I'll take after. And I'm waiting to receive some more visitors because I know Hillbrow is our home. And under Cathedral, Cathedral is Christ the King, the church within Donfontein in Johannesburg, and it's one of the home parishes for all the people living around there. We receive visitors, we receive, every community has got a day of Mass in Cathedral. We have got Malawian Mass, you can come Nigerian Mass, English Mass, Sotho, Ndebele. So it's a sub-Saharan cathedral. It's also called My Cathedral, My Home. That's how they call it. So during COVID, it was hit also so hard in the kitchen because we feed 150 people. I'm a volunteer in the kitchen because that's my passion. I work with Lizzie and Megan. They are the ones who are 24/7 in the kitchen. They were supposed to join us today, but because of that challenge that they are trying to clean back the kitchen so that it starts serving again, so they couldn't. But I'll be taking their questions and sending to them if there will be any. So during COVID, Cathedral Kitchen was closed on level 5 for 2 weeks. And for those 2 weeks, the priestess saw that there was a need because the people who used to come and feed the cathedral, 150 people, most of them did not agree to go to the shelters. So some were just coming to sit at the gate of cathedral, but there was no food because the COVID had threatened everyone who didn't know what to do. So, but after 2 weeks, the team agreed, no, let us serve back the people because they keep coming. So the only thing that was served now after up to level 5 to date is the dry food or cooked meals that was brought in by people, good Samaritans coming to donate. If you come with the tinned stuff, if you come with bread, but we did not make tea, they would get bread and get with maybe a fruit, depending on what has been donated there. So it was quite a challenging time, this COVID in that kitchen. So up to date, we have got the parks in eKhaya. So most of the people who were not coming to Cathedral now, they were going to the parks. Pulling Jacob, there's a big park next to Cathedral. So they could go and stay there. And good Samaritans also, there are some who had started feeding people as well. They will come and serve from the park. They will serve twice a day. And in eKhaya Park, there was one who was serving every Tuesday. And in Edith Cavell Park, there's one who serves every Monday 3 meals. So all these people who were served at Cathedral, they ended up, some of them entering in those serving spaces around, because some are serving 3 course of meals, some 1, some 2, depending on what they have received. Basically, I think for the soup kitchen as well, that's where I end. I will take questions as well. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you so much, Bafikile. And so now we will go to the question and answer portion of this panel. I'd like to start myself with a question, and if we could go to you, Ethel, and maybe the first question, Ethel, do you prefer Ethel or do you prefer Fatuani?
Any fine.
Okay. So the border was closed for several months during the COVID crisis in the early months. In fact, I think it only opened up earlier this month, just a few days ago. So could you describe the impact there? There were a number of people crossing the border from Zimbabwe every day, from several other locations every day. What happened when the border closed? And what has happened both to people who were trying to come across? Were people still trying to come, given that there's a starvation crisis in Zimbabwe? And what has happened to people who are trying to get home?
Okay. I think basically I will start with the people who were trying to come over. So it was really difficult for like Zimbabweans to cross to South Africa due to the fact that the police visibility was very high during COVID-19 soldiers. So the government actually made sure that the soldiers, they have enough soldiers and police actually to look at the fact that no one is supposed to either cross back to Zimbabwe or come back to South Africa. So it has been really difficult. And during the crisis of COVID, another issue that we was very difficult for the community as well as us as an organization, because we are advocating for them, was the fact that while they were hungry in South Africa, they wanted to run back home because they thought maybe then they will have high support from either families or so forth. So what happened is they couldn't go home. They came to us to ask for assistance, to actually assist them so that they can go back home. So we even asked our funders if they can assist, and the funders agreed that they can assist the migrants to go back home once the borders are open, but not currently during the borders, while the borders are closed. But currently, if I can tell you, Ron, as soon as the borders opened, we had about 60 people who were planning to go back home, but all of them canceled because they said, no, we don't want to go back home anymore because we are on level 1, so we can actually do our own work. So we don't want to go back home.
Okay.
So, but during COVID, they were willing to go back.
Could you, I want to make sure to give everybody else a chance to ask questions, but I'm just so curious about this now. So if unemployment has gotten to be at around 50% in Johannesburg, what is the impact on people? Could you maybe just describe what the city feels like at this point for people who are migrants that are trying to decide whether to remain, whether to go home, how to get home? Could you just go into a little bit of detail on that?
Okay. I think currently the migrants community, they would love to go back home. They wanted to go back home. But as soon as we went to level 1, like I'm saying, they wanted, they don't want to go back home because they think home is worse. But now in South Africa it's better because the borders are open. They will be able to go back and actually sell as street vendors. They can actually do other businesses that they used to do before COVID. And with the high unemployment rate, like you are saying in South Africa, this is also causing a huge conflict. I see South Africa again entering into xenophobia. Xenophobic attacks will be more because now most of like us as Outreach Foundation, we were catering mostly for migrants because of the fact that they were not able to access any other services from government. So we were seen as us being supporting migrants and not supporting the locals. So there's still going to be a huge fight between South Africans and migrants as well because of things like that. Had the government actually assisted also a migrant, they will think there is equality, but now there is high inequality also caused by the government not looking at migrants as people who are in South Africa and needed our services. Because I also had another case, just to share a bit, where a family from Cameroon, actually a child was actually sick, and I took the child to hospital, but the child died because of malnutrition. So 3 more kids from the same family were admitted in a hospital due to malnutrition. And when I asked the government, like Social Development, Department of Health, to actually intervene, no one wanted to assist because they are migrants and they're illegal in the country and they didn't have any documentation. So looking at that and looking at the high unemployment rate and the fact that now about 3 million people lost their jobs in South Africa, you see that there's going to be a lot of things that will be happening in South Africa, and xenophobia might be one of them.
Okay, thank you very much, Fatwani. And Dr. Spear has a hand up. Did you want to ask a question?
I do, and this is directed at all the participants. What I'm wondering about is how you deal with cultural differences. You've got migrants from all over Southern Africa, different tribes, different countries. And you're getting people from Nigeria. Now, this is a challenge for us in the United States. We get such an influx of different peoples. We have to show sensitivity and take into account differences. So I'm wondering, we call it cultural competency here for people that work in social welfare and that kind of thing. So, and you've got people with different religions, of course. So this is a challenge. We're trying to master it, and we've got a long way to go. How are you dealing with this in South Africa?
I should add one quick thing that one of our speakers who could have spoken to this because he studies xenophobia David Monda had to leave because he's got to teach a class. So would any of the other speakers like to address that question?
Hi, everyone. I'll just tend to take a part of it. The inclusionary in South Africa. Yes, we live with all the people, all the cultures. We have learned to say South Africa is for all who live in it. That is the one thing that keeps on working around every person or cultural group or whoever comes to South Africa. However, that is why we have got places like eKhaya neighborhood, where we build the social cohesion, where we try to bring all the people together, try to work together. But yes, there are differences, so many. But we always, the government always hold those programs to try and bring people together so that we can work, we can live, and we can just socialize together. But yes, there are challenges. Thank you.
Along those lines, maybe Fatawani, maybe you would could tell us something about language. I was going to ask just about the capacity at your center for various languages. People who come to your center for assistance, how many languages do the people who work in your center speak?
Okay, mostly we have Zimbabweans, but to try and assist, be able to assist everyone, we were using the services of cultural mediators, which was offered to us by one of the child protection organization.
Okay, thank you. And should we open the...
I can comment as well.
Okay, how about Simon and then Mwaona?
All right.
Okay. Okay. What I've seen at some of our training centers, this is what I've seen in the past. When you have students, way back we had citizens and migrants going through learning course. You'll find a lot of excitement in getting to know the other person's culture, in getting to know the background of migrants from citizens. And my perspective of this is the sensitivity is, I've seen a lot of sensitivity once people get to understand where the individual is from, and what the individual is about once you have socialized or lived within a certain area. So people people become sensitive once they get to know you. That's from my perspective. That's what I've actually seen.
Okay, great. Thank you, Simon. And Mwaona?
Okay, my comment is twofold. The first comment is that when people are migrating from Malawi to South Africa, they usually have a picture of what South Africa is about. Some of them, they are even aware of South African music. So when they arrive in South Africa, usually they easily integrate into the culture of South Africans, because they might have heard through the music and possibly they enjoy it. Apart from that, South Africa being a different cultural setting altogether, they also have some cultural shock. But like myself as a migrant in South Africa, what we could do is during the first day, you could see what are the things that the people in South Africa like to do, what are the things they are sensitive about. So there are some other things that people are comfortable doing here in Malawi, but when you arrive in South Africa, there's a thing called the Chakwanuleka, whereby you try to understand the people you're staying with, and you try as much as possible to adapt and adopt a new way of living. So that's what I may comment from my perspective on that.
Thank you very much. And are there other questions? You can also answer pose questions in the chat as well, but you can also feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask the question verbally.
Could I ask a quick question for Mwaona?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so hi, thank you all to all the speakers. I've learned a lot already and I really appreciate it. But I just wanted to ask Mwaona, I hope I said that correctly, specifically a question about remittances. So I feel like me and most of my American peers, sort of when we think of remittances, we think of like using the mail or something to send it. I was just wondering if you could speak to the actual process. I know you said that now you can't send larger sums of money through buses, but I was just wondering if you could speak to the process of how remittances actually work and how they actually physically get from Joburg to Malawi.
All right, thank you. Actually, you pronounced my name quite well, which is really impressive today, considering that most people, even here in Malawi, they have problems pronouncing my name.
I'm glad.
So, thank you. So basically, when people want to send money from Johannesburg to Malawi, there are several options, such as the banks. And there are also other providers, such as the Mukuru and Paisa. But now the challenge is that if you want to send money through the bank, you need to have a visa, documentation to show that you are not illegal in South Africa. So most Malawians who travel to South Africa, they travel illegally. So they usually have problems working with the banks. So what they do is that they usually transfer the money through other people. Let's say there is a bus traveling from Johannesburg to Malawi, then they'll just give the money to the driver or someone who is traveling so that they should give the money. Then that person will take that money and give the person. Or sometimes what happens is that if maybe you have money in South Africa and you want to send it to Malawi, you can ask someone in Malawi to say, can you please give money to a relative of mine? And I can maybe spend the rands that I have here in South Africa to buy something that you want, or maybe I can do a transaction on your behalf in South Africa. So that way people are able to send money. Or maybe the cheaper way, which is formal, is using Paisa and the Mukuru, but these are a little bit expensive, so people would prefer to use the most informal ones. But now it's becoming difficult to use the informal ones because one, people from Malawi are not buying that much in South Africa, because even if you buy something, chances that it won't reach Malawi because of the lockdowns. Then apart from that, it's also difficult for someone to send through the buses because the borders were closed. So this brought a very huge challenge. Maybe just to comment about the buses as well, there is a very sad development that is some of the migrants from Malawi could also use these buses to get ARVs from, especially those who had maybe they had HIV and AIDS. So they could use these buses to get ARVs from Malawi when they have run out of them. But now, because of the lockdown, some of them had problems with that, and some of them even ended up buying ARVs from people who are not licensed. Maybe someone who is selling buns, then he learns that business, which is actually, I think, is not acceptable in South African society, but people still do it anyway because they're trying to survive under very difficult situations. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, you definitely have. Thank you so much. It's just fascinating to me the level of trust that one must have to give a bus driver a bunch of money and hope it gets to the family. It's really fascinating.
Yes, because most of these people, they frequently travel to South Africa. So maybe they also want to have a good reputation.
Sure. No,
Yes.
that makes sense.
Yes, I think it's really fascinating. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question based on what Veer just said. But is there like a high chance that like the money just doesn't get sent, or like even through like banks or something, like it just like doesn't go through? or like the money just like, you know, goes into someone else's pockets or something like that?
Maybe there is that chance, but I haven't heard. I haven't heard so far, because usually these are not a lot of money. It's little amounts, and at the same time, the driver maybe would give him a little something. So it's like they are also benefiting from the whole thing. But personally, from my personal perspective, I haven't met any of my friends complaining. But yes, you are right. Maybe it might happen.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have we got other questions? Along those lines of sending money back home, I'm kind of interested in what must be the incredible emotional impact, the emotional toll that COVID has taken in terms of migrants not being able to send money back to their families. Would anybody like to address that?
Yes, I could comment a little. Actually, a friend of mine called me some few days ago. She's in South Africa, and she was talking about the problem that they have here, that her relatives have here in Malawi. So she was complaining people don't have food at home, but unfortunately, I also don't have the money to help. So she was actually worried that she would really want to be a good part of the family, and the people were looking up to her that she would be able to help, because she's the one who usually helps out when things get bad. And she really sounded worried that there was this burden, and she did wish she could do something, but she simply didn't have the power to help. So I think there is a lot of frustration happening around. The family dynamics are changing, and possibly that's what I would say.
Thank you.
I think hi Ron, just to add on that, a lot of the migrants that I've spoken to in some of our shelters have really felt bad. They cannot, assist their families back home. They feel they have a huge responsibility, so much weighs on their shoulders, being away from their native countries. And it's also worrisome for them, thinking about the economies from their home countries that are really also struggling. So a lot of people are they're going through stress. Some are really dying. I had a chat with Richa, who gave me some few examples about such cases. Yeah.
Richa, did you want to add anything?
Richa wants to add something, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Ron. What I could add also, there's the situation for accommodation for most migrants. Mostly migrants are renting. It's a monthly basis. So the situation for the COVID crisis, they find themselves unable to pay the rent. And then what we really experienced, other people being kicked out during the COVID, other been abused by the landlord and been kicked out from the house where they were staying. So it's really very bad. These people are confused. They find themselves in the situation whereby they don't even know what come next. And I can also associate the education for children. Some migrants find themselves to even send the kids back to school because they've been using public transport, where they have to pay, or the buses, and now they found that the father and the mother, both of them are not working, and the child can't go to school, can't walk, can't study. Others, there's some program at school being online, and it's not everyone could afford to pay the data. So yeah, it's become we really don't know what can we do. Something that's like creating a dilemma between the migrant community, because we also have so much restriction for being migrant. and mostly undocumented. The documentation is the most, it's a big problem right now because we find ourselves, even some other migrant children don't even have a birth certificate for the reason that we really don't understand. And yes, been going to the lawyers, but we can't solve this problem. So this problem for documents, it gives us so much challenges in a way that even the person fell sick today, there's no way that he can go to the hospital because they can't even assist him. We experience a lot of death in our community. That many parents died and left the children. For others, it was COVID, but other people, we don't understand if it was COVID or what, but it's just like heart attack. Someone just died. And yesterday we experienced another woman just died. She was not sick, but have a lot of stress and confusion. Is how those people are dying on a daily basis. We registered many deaths during this COVID crisis among the migrant community.
Thank you so much, Richa. Have we got additional questions? So we have 3 mentees that are here, and they're each studying a different aspect of migrants in not only South Africa, but Sub-Saharan Africa. And so Leo is interested in the human rights framework, and maybe you might want to ask a question, particularly Fatuani, I don't know if you sometimes go to the Home Office the way that Sizwe did, and sometimes work with migrants as they try to deal with their paperwork at the Home Office. But maybe you and Leo could have just a little discussion about that.
Okay. Basically, in terms of documentation and for us as Outreach Foundation, what we do is we've realized previously that we've been actually failing because we didn't have our own lawyer based with us who can actually take cases to Home Affairs, because every time we go to Home Affairs, it was always challenging for us and for also our beneficiaries, because when you get there, you get turned away. And sometimes when they do help, they say, no, this person doesn't qualify. And when you ask why, like the reasons that you are given, and you understand that you have all the proof that this person can actually get documentation. So what we did last year was we asked one of our funders from Germany to fund a lawyer who will be able to take cases. So currently this year we were able to take 2 cases, and one of those cases, at least the person was able to get an asylum. But with the others, we already are now just waiting for Home Affairs, because we had registered just since lockdown, we've registered more than 150 cases for people who need assistance with documentation, because they've applied since 2012, but they're not getting any reply. Their application keeps on pending. So there's a lot of issues around human rights violations from government departments and other institutions in South Africa based on migrants.
Thank you. And you also mentioned that you that one of the funders has been working to provide funds to get people back home.
Yes.
And can you give us a sense of the volume? How many people are trying to get back home?
Okay, I think when we were during level 3 and 2, we had about 60 to 80 applications of people who wanted to go back home. Because they were not having money for rentals. There were lots of eviction cases, which our lawyer actually assisted us to stop the evictions due to lockdown regulations. But most of the other people who wanted to go back home was the fact that they were not be able to send money back home. And they felt that their families will think they are just irresponsible, not sending money, not because they are not working or not getting any money, but because they are just not responsible. So that's why they wanted to get back home, so that they will be with their families, and their families will understand that they're just not working. It's not like being irresponsible.
Okay, thank you, Fatwani. And again, I'm encouraging the mentees and the students to ask questions. I will ask a question on behalf of Riley, who is looking at the overall pattern of migration from sub-Saharan African countries. She's partly looking also at the flow north and not only south to South Africa. But maybe anyone here on the panel might be able to describe some of the reasons that people are coming into South Africa or leaving their countries in general.
Hi, Ron. So for some, it's definitely greener pastures. It's definitely a better life. It's having a better future for themselves, being able to go to a better university, further their studies. For some, it's kind of just, you know, traveling, taking a travel and take a gamble. Hey, I just want to go and see what's happening in South Africa. And then you kind of get hooked to some of the systems that are set up. You know, you can voice your opinions. You can hold a strike, a march. You have freedom of speech, of which in some of the other countries in Africa, you are kind of limited to. And you know, that that included with some of the other challenges that, you know, that they might have had in their home countries. It kind of makes it really impossible for them to think about going back home when they're still in the prime. They rather go back probably when they're old. That's the sense. That's one of the experiences that I've had around. You know, having to chat with other migrants as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Simon.
I can comment on. Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Bafikile first, and then Mwaona.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Mana. Just to add on what Simon have been saying in connection with why all migrants are coming to South Africa. We are living with different of them in the buildings, and we have posed this question on several times that what is it that exactly is attracting most of the migrants when they're coming to South Africa? And most of them, it's about, yes, economic factors. And another thing that some have been raising, it's because, you know, the African leaders themselves have got to make their countries as well be, their economies work as well as what probably South Africa is doing, because most people are running away from their countries, and some are mentioning things of human rights, saying that there are no freedom of doing anything that you want, which they find working better for them when they come to South Africa. So I was just adding on to what Simon have just said now, because we are talking with a lot of people, we are meeting them in different settings, but then when you give out this question, most of them will tell you that probably it's the failure of the African leaders that are failing to level their countries as well to accommodate their own people, so they end up going to other countries. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Bafikile. And Mwaona?
Yes, I also agree with all the points that have been raised, but I just wanted to add some more information. I'll especially comment from the perspective of Malawi. Most Malawian migrants, they migrate as the economic migrants. However, there are some other situations that force people to move. For example, almost every year here in Malawi, we have hunger episodes. So people, we just get used that at a certain point of time, there will be a certain section of our population which will not have food. And if you also try to look at the statistics here in Malawi, you'll find that most children are stunted. Maybe, I think I've forgotten the actual figure, but you find that maybe over 40% of the children are actually stunted. And there are also huge issues of malnutrition. So these are some of the issues that actually force people to say, maybe this should not be life. Maybe there's somewhere else where I can go and have food, actual food, maybe a balanced diet. It doesn't have to be maybe vegetables and sima all the time. Maybe we'll have a balanced diet as well. So those are some of the things that when they hear their friends say, oh, I'm in South Africa, we had this nice meal today, they say, I think maybe we could live better. So then there are also some other issues like Malawi being a very conservative society. You have issues like witchcraft accusations and things like those. So some people would prefer to move and go to South Africa and live in a society that is more tolerant than you maybe where you live in a society where people are accusing each other, or maybe if you you look a little bit successful, someone would think maybe you've bewitched someone and the cases like. So those are some of the reasons, just to add on the ones that have already been raised.
Thank you. And
Richa, I'd
yes,
like also to add a comment.
Please.
Yes. What I can say, most people came to South Africa, what I can say from my own perspective, like there are others that ran away from the war displacement people. They came in South Africa where they look for, they're here to look for shelter because they've been abused, either lost parents, they lost everything. And that is why they make this move to come to South Africa. And what I also realized that the way we are so many in South Africa, migrant people, we are too much here in South Africa. We are the fruits of our irresponsible leaders. They fail us. They are greedy people, very corrupt, and we've been oppressed for so many years. Reason why people, they prefer to come in South Africa. And on this occasion, I would like also to thank the government of South Africa. Although we experienced xenophobia attack, but at least this is the only place in Africa where we can see what freedom it looks like. Not even in our side only, but if when we are watching them, we can see that that's the only place that we can see human rights is playing its role, what we never experienced in our own country. I come from DRC, and every day I'm experiencing, or I can see on the news, on the internet, that each second or 2 seconds, Congolese women being raped, and there's no government can go and protect this this woman that been raped in front of her children or her husband or whoever, and there's no one, not even the president or the authority can say a word. It's seen for all over the world that Congolese women have been raped every day, and up to now I haven't seen I haven't seen any justice. Yes, justice must be done in my country. And we are here so that we can also raise this voice. So that today, African and Congolese women are raising the voice. We are looking for help. So there's many women that I'm dealing with that are victims of this abuse. So there's no way that even if you can tell them that you have to go back home, they will tell that they prefer to die in South Africa. Though they're going through difficulties, they made many challenges, problems, but they will tell you that South Africa is still the best. You see, and then you find the person is suffering, sometimes doesn't even have a place to stay or something to eat, but he doesn't want to go back. Recently we had a meeting with the mothers, and then we see what can we do, because like right now there's a crisis also in South Africa. It's impossible even to go to apply for a job because South Africans themselves, they are unemployed at this time. But they will tell you that we don't want to go back. We rather go to America or Canada. If there's any way that they can get this resettlement, and that is the best way that they'll see. They don't look back, like to go back home. Thank you.
Thank you, Richa, so much. There's a question in the chat. Does the South African government do they grant asylum or refugee status to Congolese women, or do most have to enter unauthorized?
Yes, Ron. Yes, it's not everyone that is qualified to get that grant. That is it a grant. It's not everyone that is qualified. There's some. Yes, I can be. I can assure there's many Congolese people. They are also receiving that grant, but it's not everybody. There's some procedures you must have. We've got different permits. There's a Section 22, a Section 24. I think is one of Section 24 are qualified to get a grant, not a Section 22, who are the asylum seeker. If you are refugees, I think that time you can be able to apply for the grant from the government.
Thank you very much.
Kind of a follow-up question to that, if I could. We've talked a lot today about sort of the role of, private organizations and NGOs in assisting migrants in Johannesburg. I was wondering if there are any public government organizations that, at least in an ostensible sense, exist to assist migrants or immigrants, and what the success or your experiences or perceptions with any of those organizations may be, if they exist.
Hello, Ron.
Yes, please.
Yes, I think currently there's no government that's willing to assist migrants.
So it's all coming from private organizations, is that right? Fatwani? Fatwani, are you still there? Might have had a volume cut for a moment. Thank you, Leo. That was a very good question, and it sounds as if it's only coming from private organizations. And Veer,
Hi, Ron. Hi, Ron. We
yes.
got cut off there. We got cut off for a second. If we can just, if the question can be repeated, please, maybe for clarity.
So Leo's question was, he said, we've been hearing a lot about what private organizations are doing for refugees and asylum seekers. Are there any government organizations working with migrants, asylum seekers, or refugees?
Ron, up to now, we tried to apply for the government, but we didn't receive any help up so far. Yes. We only received, the only help we got was for private organization with food parcel, not from the government.
Okay, so food parcels from private organizations, nothing from the government. Okay.
So, Ron, I have to say, yes, a lot of private organizations have, stepped in and have helped during the hard lockdown up to now. What the government has done, and this is also towards citizens and qualifying migrants receive a grant which equals to $21 per month. And this has been set out for the past 6 months, coming to an end, I think, in about November. We had a huge protest from citizens that really wanted the grant to be extended. So that's probably an extension that we might see very soon. Towards migrants, I'm not 100% sure if the extension might also apply.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon. I hope you'll keep us updated on what the result is. And Veer, you had a question?
Yeah, this is a question for Bafikile. So one of the big issues that hit New York first when COVID started and people were out of work was that many people just immediately had an impossible time paying rent. So there were a lot of calls for things like rent freezes, rent forgiveness. So I was just wondering if you could speak to any troubles with like rent. Have landlords been kind? Has the government subsidized any rent? How are people paying it now? Is basically my question.
Okay, thanks, Leo. On the rental to our tenants during the COVID time for all the social housing, so everyone was allowed to stay in the building, depending on each organization. So each organization has got to apply to the city of Johannesburg in terms of paying rates. They were given some free period, if I can say. So all the tenants that are living within our buildings did not pay rent. Most of them started paying rent now in level, quarter of them in level 3 and 4, 5. At 5, we are having 60% of them paying rent. So what happened is all the owing months that they had, other organizations are making them to pay it slot by slot. You pay the current rent, full current rent, and pay part of what you are owing. Other organizations already canceled off all those months which they were not working but still staying in the businesses. So it was differing according to organizations. However, it wasn't very harsh for them because they would talk to the tenants and they agree on what they would afford to pay in what they owe to the building. I don't know if I've answered your question, right?
You did. Thank you so much.
Just to add on that, just to add on what Mama Bafikile just said now, most buildings in Hillbrow that are now refurbished and that are run properly, or most social housing that are run properly, we didn't see people being kicked out during the period. They held the dignity of the of the people staying in these buildings was upheld. Or upheld. Yeah.
So the evictions were happening in the buildings that have not been restored. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying, Simon?
Yes. Yes, evictions were happening mostly in buildings that have not been refurbished, buildings that are run illegally, buildings where somebody can just kick you out and you cannot do a thing at all. You cannot pursue them at all. And sometimes you are a subtenant of the subtenant. So those type of issues were just a bit complicated.
Yes, again on that, because in Hillbrow we've got different type of properties. There are properties that are hijacked, which are run by a group of people. There are management. There are other properties that are run by agents, that are run by different people, and we've got proper housings which are run by social housing. So all these hijacked buildings, and they don't listen to your problems. All what they want is money. So the people who are mostly staying in those buildings are the ones who are facing more challenges, because those people wanted their money despite they know that you are not working. You are also on lockdown, but they still want some money.
So what is the scale of the eviction crisis? How many people have been forced out of the units that they were living in? And is there a homeless crisis that has resulted from that?
There are so many people who have been living in these buildings. Some of them had applied for the evictions before lockdown. But on the lockdown, the rule was no one will be evicted. But we could see others exercising that, and we couldn't understand why. Thank you.
So Ron, just to also add, during this period, we've had a huge number of new people coming to a lot of people coming to our shelters, and issues being, when we dive down, the issues are that they've been kicked out of the buildings, and one of the reasons, or before I go to one of the reasons, because they are undocumented, you find it very hard going to the police and reporting the landlord you being kicked out because you fear being arrested yourself, and it also became kind of like a low type of a thing where you get kicked out, but you're not allowed to hire any car or any truck to move your stuff around, because the landlords knew exactly, people, we could not see any trucks moving around with furniture in there. So everybody was kind of like hush type of situation. They evicted.
Thank you very much, Simon. And so one of the students has asked in the chat, would anyone be able to touch on xenophobic attitudes towards members of the LGBT plus community? This is a student who's studying LGBTQI migrants in Johannesburg. Does anyone have any experiences on that? Has Ethel gone? I think we might have lost.
Ron, I'm back.
Oh yes. So
Yes.
has the Outreach Foundation dealt with any LGBTQI migrants specifically?
No, we don't. Actually, we were surprised last time when we got a student who wanted to do a thesis on LGBT migrants, but we've never received any, not even one in our organization.
Okay. It's interesting because I have spoken to other people at Outreach
Yes.
about LGBTQI issues, but not about the migrant issue.
Yes.
So I wonder if this might have something to do with a fear of being exposed as an LGBTQI migrant.
Yeah, I would think so, Ron, because basically being a migrant itself, it poses a threat to you. So if you have to also be an LGBT, I feel like it might be that we don't have them, but they don't want to be exposed to different situations like that of xenophobic.
So it's kind of like two different stigmas, one on top of the other.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Just to pursue a little bit further, what would an LGBTQI migrant do then? Let's say they were, I have read a little bit about this in Johannesburg. If they were an LGBTQI migrant, they may be rejected by the community that they live within in Johannesburg, and then also maybe rejected by the broader communities. Is there anything for them at all? Is there anywhere that they could go?
I think, especially with us as Outreach Foundation, we are able to help anybody, even if you are a migrant, LGBT. We are able to assist you and link you to the organization that can actually assist you further if we cannot. So we don't discriminate whether you are a lesbian or not, or whether you are a migrant or not. So what we try to do, like currently we are doing lots of workshops for migrants, women and men, and we actually teach them to be tolerant of each other, because amongst themselves, they have their own little community. So I think they might also be rejected by their own people, but not by organization or NPOs working with them. Because what we try to do now is actually trying to integrate everything that migrants go through by including them and the South African in the same conversations, so that they can understand and learn to tolerate each other while they living in South Africa.
Thank you very much. And we are coming near the end. I do want to note that in the chat, this is a private chat just sent directly to me, but there is some really interesting points coming up about one of the contributors says that some of the housekeepers and gardeners who are living in Johannesburg are afraid of going back home because they're afraid that they may risk their jobs, and they may have difficulty getting back into the country if they do go back home. Can anybody speak on that issue? Maybe the fear of going back home during the COVID period, and then a sense that, well, I won't be able to get back into South Africa.
Ron?
Yes, please.
Hello. Yes, I think we've heard about 2 or 3 who actually wanted us to assist them because there was a funeral back home and they wanted to go. But the challenge that we have is that you cannot interfere. It's a labor matter, but this person is not registered by the employer as an employee working under them. So that means that becomes an arrangement. Again, we also explain to the person, to the person that we're trying to assist, to say, but you do know that this person already employed you illegally. So if you were to again go back home, then that means we cannot protect you if the person actually says you cannot work for them or fires you. So it becomes a labor matter, but we cannot assist. Like currently during COVID, just to give an example, during COVID, we had cases where people were supposed to receive UIF and they thought that they have been registered all along and they were migrants, but unfortunately they were not registered by their employers. So it actually caused a lot of chaos when our lawyer had to intervene in labor matters such as that, because the people were not registered and they were not aware that they were not registered as migrants. And I think the employers actually target them because they want to exploit them. They will never hire a South African because the South African wants more money for doing gardening and household chores, while a migrant might want anything that they are given because of the situation back home.
Okay, thank you very much, Fatwani. And are there any additional questions? You know, I know maybe the students might be a little bit shy. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's a very, very friendly group of people, and do feel free to ask any questions that, you know, many of you are writing about asylum seekers, and you may have additional questions. We'd like to hear them.
Hi, Ron. Sorry, I'm not one of the students, but let me go. So just to quickly add, xenophobic attacks, as far as some of the migrant community is involved or is in question in the inner city, Hillbrow, Berea, Yeoville, these are communities where migrants look out for each other. And you also have citizens that live in these communities that do understand or have interacted quite largely with some of the migrants. So I have not seen any type of agitation towards any sort of xenophobic retribution during this time, especially in the inner city, in the areas that I've mentioned. The issue about cheap labor and the fear of losing what you call your job if you were to return back home, because of certain legislations, you find that the person is not cannot have that type of employment. They will try to shield the employer as far as take some sort of blame and not want to have the law come down heavy on the employer. And if they were to travel back, the cheap labor is easily replaced, and that's a huge concern for them. Those are some of the points I just quickly wanted to make. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And as we come to a close, would anybody like to speak about what you think the future may hold? We have no idea how long it's going to take for a vaccine to develop and how soon that a vaccine might be distributed universally in Southern Africa. But what kind of future rebuilding efforts, a chance to recover from the COVID crisis do you see? Maybe that's
Aaron.
Yes, please, Fatwani.
Yes, just to say something about that, because currently I think also because during this COVID-19 pandemic, most of the international organization actually came through for migrants and other community members who are vulnerable. But I feel like going forward, also Europeans, they're not spared, you guys are not spared. I feel like there would be loss of funding from different stakeholders who've been funding NPOs, and that will also impact migrants' work that we do, because our government is not funding the migrant that we do. So I feel like this pandemic will definitely cause a strain, because most of this funding ends in December just for the COVID relief. So I'm asking myself, from next year, what then? What happens when the international donors have also pulled out? What does it mean for our migrant society?
So there's a worry that there will not be as much international donor funding?
Yes. That's what we got from our funders. So they're giving us money up until December, because initially it was a 3 months relief. Now they extended it to 6 months, but giving us an ultimatum to find a sustainable model or any other things that we can actually do to sustain whatever we are giving to migrants, which is not possible during this pandemic.
Ron,
yes.
I think also to take it forward, probably to empower the most of the migrants in terms of those who can do businesses around their settings, because right now in most of our area, you see there are a lot of upcoming businesses that started after COVID, especially on level 4 and 5. Even those who were not doing any businesses, you find them with little things. They're trying to sustain themselves under businesses. They have trusted businesses now more than getting employed. I'm sure if they are empowered around that, to get 10 and then they train on something, we empower them, they sustain themselves going forward. Such as to say, if we come to another peak and another challenge, they are also able to deal with the situation themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. And along those lines, how about just the very localized funding that you get for the soup kitchen? Has funding dropped off? You know, just the individual contributions and the small local networks that have been of aid to the soup kitchen. Is that continuing or is that dropping off?
Oh yes, we are still looking for the funding because now there are more people coming in at level 5, and they heard that the kitchen has opened. There is more funding and support that we are looking for. We've been assisting with what we're getting from individuals and other good Samaritans that were giving us. The church itself is also struggling. It hasn't come up to its feet because it depends on the offerings and things, and the church has not been functioning. So there was no money coming in for all the lockdown period. But the kitchen has got to run now, so we are still trying to stand by our feet to make it working. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So Ron?
Yes, Simon.
Ron, from our side, from MES side, once the pandemic hit, was upon us, we are really lucky and gracious enough that we had quite a lot of airtime, media time on TV. Our CEO had a lot of interviews on TV, and a lot of people responded positively locally. And we've seen a lot of funds, a lot of donations coming through. This has assisted some of our shelters dwellers, including migrants and citizens, clothing and all that kind of stuff. What's the future? How bleak is it? The future has to recover. In the future, we have to recover economically and relationship-wise. A lot of relationships have just gone dead. That's what we are seeing. What we've also seen during this period of time, it's the Ubuntu spirit. The little that you had, you could share. You had to share with your neighbor because you did not know if tomorrow you could be in the same type of crisis. Travel and tourism, those kind of sectors have to, come back for the economy to reflourish. One of the issues that we've had, or some of the questions that we've been having, we've had a lot of volunteers during the lockdown period or during the pandemic, assisting with some of the valuable, knowledgeable skills, and they are not earning a proper income or a full income, or they're earning partially. We start to wonder if such volunteers might end up at our doors becoming, seeking for assistance. So those are some of the issues we battle with, real issues on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. And so it is 10:10 now, and we are at the end of our incredibly wonderful panel. I want to just thank everyone who participated. Fatuani, David, Mwaona, Richa, Simon, Bafikile, and of course all of the attendees. I hope we can stay in contact with each other and that we may continue to converse and talk some more as we go forward. And all the very, very best to everyone. Thank you so much and much appreciated. I'll be in touch with each one of the speakers independently by email.
Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
The students.
Thank
The students the students can feel free to send their questions in writing, and we can still respond to that, and then we send them back to you, Ron. Thank you
Great.
very much
That
for the
that would be
platform.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hi, Jean. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Hi, it's so nice to see you. It's really
Yes,
such a treat.
certainly.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
Okay, thank
Wonderful
you.
program, Professor Nerio. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We welcome.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I learned so much. I really appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you so much, guys. Nice meeting you.
And thanks to the presenters so much.